Top four or the title, how far should our ambition reach? It's your call, and this is your e-Spurs podcast, Extra Time. Hi guys, welcome to this week's Extra Time, your second smaller bite of the e-Spurs podcast each week. This week on Extra Time we'll be getting your thoughts on our big talking point of the week, and this week we asked top four or the title, what should be our ambition at the start of next season? And of course, you know, we know from this season now we've got the top four, we've got that place secured in the Champions League next season, but moving forward, how ambitious do we get? Do we think title next year? Do we aim for that from the get-go? Or is top four and consolidation a better target to aim for at the start of next season? Here to talk that and all things Spurs are the e-Spurs team. It's Jason, John, Ricky and Ian. How you doing, lads?
Very well, thanks.
All good, thank you.
Brilliant stuff. And of course, this is our penultimate Extra Time of the season. If you listen to the podcast earlier in the week, you'll know that we talked about, amongst other things, we talked about the race for top four and moving forward. Do we start thinking bigger? Do we go for the title? And what should be the aim? And of course, you guys have been great again in getting your feedback into us, getting your thoughts on this one. Every week we put it out on our Twitter and Facebook, and you guys have got your responses into us this week on what you think our aim should be at the start of next season. So, Rick, how big do we start thinking next season?
Well, bearing in mind, looking at this season and how well we've done, and up to the last 2-3 games, we was in a title race, being one of only two sides, then we have, in my opinion, we have to have the same ambition for next season. And obviously the aim at the end of the season is to have a review, look at the squad, see where you could have done better, and try and improve the areas which are weak. And, you know, if we do that and we do the necessary changes that need to be made to the squad and add the necessary striker, for me, another defensive midfielder, possibly another central midfielder as well, then we won't be far off again. I think I said on previous pods, for me, we're already a year ahead of the likes of Liverpool, of the Chelsea, United, City, all of these teams. You hear a lot in terms of the media saying they're all going to have to buy 5-6 players. Well, Spurs don't need to do that because we are already in such a fantastic position. We know our best team. It pretty much picks itself. All we need to do really now is tweak the squad slightly just to improve certain areas where we may require a game changer, someone to come off the bench to add some more goals if needs be, or just to tighten us up a bit more defensively if we are holding out a lead. I would also like to see maybe one or two players come in with a bit more experience to the side. I think we've seen towards the end of the season, especially the Chelsea game, as much as we love seeing that fight on the field, I do think obviously we lost our heads slightly as well. So there is that kind of need for that bit more experience. But for me, there's no reason again why Spurs shouldn't be challenging for the league. No reason whatsoever.
Is there a danger, Jay, that if we don't set the league title as our aim for next season, is there a danger that eventually we could fall into the trap that lot down the road are falling into with their top four trophy?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we mock them for that, and they've done that for years, isn't it? And I think if you set that as your target and you kind of work towards that rather than looking for the big thing. Yeah. But I think the one person, you know, we can all talk about what our target should be. This is 1 year when Daniel Levy has to have the ambition that Pochettino's got. And I'm not anti-Daniel Levy at all, but this year he cannot wait for Levy time because, you know, we saw that even this year, for the first 4 games, or it was the 4th game before we won a game, we cannot lose any more time from the start of a season. If we're going to win the title or be in the title race, we've got to be at it from day one, which means the squad's got to be in place. There's none of this, if I leave it for a couple of weeks, maybe some chairman will let me off with a couple of million quid or something like that. You know, Daniel Levy's really got to be hand in hand with Pochettino. Once he gets that shopping list to him, he's got to deliver the players that Pochettino wants. But I certainly, you know, whether we can win the title or not, very difficult. But I really want us to go into next April with a chance to win it, you know, being right in the mix at that stage, and then we take it from there. And if it ended up we finished second or third and we won a cup along the way, be it Carling Cup, be it FA Cup or something like that, then you'd sit there and still say not too bad a season. But it is important that we aim for the title, but it's very important that we also stay within that top four.
And Ian, do you think at the start of the season the manager should publicly state that we're aiming for the title, or should he play it more low key, shall we say?
I think that he should play it low key, but I think that, going back to this winning mentality, I just think it should be a given. I think that, if we've had a good season this season, but in the grand scheme of things, we've got no silverware to show for it. And as I've said before, nobody remembers who comes second. So I think the mentality around the club is that next season we try for a higher position. And if that is second or first, then it's second or first. And that's what we should set our ambition out to be at the very, very start of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Aim for the top. Why not? If you're going to be ambitious, and you would think now we've got the right manager in there. He seems ambitious in what he says, in what he does. It's key, as Jay said there. Levy's actions over the summer. I think we saw, and again, not to knock Levy. We saw last time we were in the Champions League that summer, we didn't come up with the players. Having said that, we had some pretty good players around already in the squad. But the players that were brought in that summer weren't of Champions League level, I don't think. I think
on that similar theme, Andy, what has frustrated me about our dealings within the transfer market is, I'm quite similar to John in that we've been going regularly now since about 2008, and I get fed up with what appears to be a complete lack of planning, because we always end up, and I recall too many seasons where we have had a horrendous start to the season in the August, and when we've only started to play in the September, and then it's got to the following, the end of that season, and we've missed out on Champions League by the odd point or the odd win. And I just think, for me, let's get the players in soon, get them in for a pre-season with Poch, and then we see where we end up. What we cannot have is this situation where we wait until, the end of August, whenever transfer deadline day is. We've got to get our people in at the beginning, because they need to get the training methodology and the system in their heads before they take to the first game of the season.
It's going to be hard, isn't it, John? When you think we've got the Euros coming up, we've got the Olympics that Jay mentioned on the main podcast. So there's going to be a lot of disruption going on, which you would think is going to hamper all clubs' transfer plans this season. So can you see the trend being bucked, if you like? Can you see us having the squad in place by the time the season starts?
Well, we can only hope so. I mean, history doesn't look favourably when you're talking about that subject, as you guys have just said. But I think, I see what Ian's saying there about us, starting a month behind everyone else in terms of transfer business. And we did, even when we did qualify for the Champions League and we bought Van der Vaart in, it weren't until, I think, the 2nd of September, I think it was deadline day that year, I seem to remember. So, yeah, it's not been very often that we've done it early. So hopefully we can... maybe the Euros and all the other things going on in the summer might encourage business to be done before that starts, maybe, or at least, having some irons in the fire in that respect before the games will kick off in the summer. But we'll see. I would like to think that Pochettino knows, maybe not the actual individual, but the kind of areas that he'd be looking to strengthen in already. So I think he's an intelligent manager and he's a good manager. So I'd like to think he's one step ahead of the game. And there's been targets we've missed out on recently, like Berahino and Wanyama, possibly, that we might revisit. So we'll see. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this summer. I think it could be really telling in the not just the immediate future, but the future. In terms of the next 5 years, really, because I can't see us bringing in too many elder statesmen. Although when I met up with Ian before the game on Sunday, and we were saying, like last season, if we'd have signed someone like Esteban Cambiasso, who'd done so well for Leicester last season, to sort of settle the players and be that leader and that calming influence, I think maybe that kind of player would do us good. But I think if we can sort of sign a couple of players that already at a level which is enough to help us compete in the Champions League that will also go on and improve. And, being young enough, again, players like Berahino and Wanyama probably would fit into that category. So we'll see. We're just guessing at the moment, but I'm sure it'll be an exciting summer at Spurs.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with that Champions League draw at the end of the summer to look forward to. It's all looking good. Of course, this stage last season, I think we already had Dele Alli signed up. He hadn't joined, but he was already on his way. So, that was one that had already been done at this time last year. So you would think they've all got, already got their plans on who they want. It's just a case of bringing them in. Brinkmanship, will we see that from Levy again? Who knows? Can a leopard change his spots? That's the question, isn't it? After 14 years, we're all used to the way that Levy works. That's the big question.
Well, I think maybe, sorry, Andy, I think maybe this time, knowing that we've got that Champions League money coming in, he won't haggle over.
Yeah.
What was reported to be, only small discrepancies. So you don't know. I mean, hopefully he doesn't go back in and offer 50p a week for 400 years for someone. So no, I'm hoping that extra revenue would mean that, even if clubs were to try and force our hand, we could, even if it was reluctantly, we could do it and say, all right, fair enough, we can afford that. Let's get it done.
What you got on the social media, mate?
So first of all, I've got Ryan_THFC. You can't come second then be happy with trying to get fourth. As Poch said, big team mentality. We've also got Sherm at the real Big Yid. If it's not always the title, then why bother existing? Top 4 should be the very least ambition. And we've got our old mate Josh Fitter 95, got to beat the title. As Vince Lombardi said, perfection is not attainable, but if we chase perfection, we can catch excellence.
I like it.
That's very, very eloquent for this podcast. I don't think we've never had a reply quite like that before.
It is an interesting one, isn't it? Because you think back to the great teams that we've had and how those managers would have been thinking now. What mentality would they had? Certainly you would think aim for the top, but then again you have to be realistic in that the times are just so different. There's the money in the game that the powerhouses of the English game have make it so much more difficult for everyone else.
Well, I think just more on a human level, we're going to have problems with, next season we're not going to be playing Davies, Trippier, Onuma in the Champions League like we've been able to do in the Europa League this season, which has ultimately helped our league form. So what you're asking players to do is either getting players in of similar quality to the starting 11, like we've mentioned before about the gulf between, in terms of quality between the starting player and a substitute. So if that gap does get bridged, it wouldn't be so much of a problem, but I can see it being, possibly the European hangovers returning next season. That's what worries me because, like I say, we are going to have to put out full-strength teams weekend, midweek, weekend, all season pretty much. And let's hope we can, let's hope we stay in it and we're still in it after Christmas. And although that, increases the chances of burnout like we seem to have been suffering lately, is something that if we want to consolidate in the top 4 and keep going for the title, we have to find a way around it.
I mean, you'd think everyone's pre-season is going to be massively disrupted, Jay. So everyone's going to be in the same boat at the start of the season, aren't they?
Yeah, and as well as the Olympics and the Euros, you've got a Copa America as well.
Yeah.
So that's a third tournament. I'd say Lamella's already been called up, I think, to that squad, hasn't he? Or certainly on the provisional list. And that, I think, is late July as well. So, but I mean, the one thing for that is as you say, every team will have that problem. And, we could well be seeing Manchester City or Man United outside the Champions League places. Liverpool finish, of course, outside if they don't win that Europa League. Chelsea could be out. And with other teams like Leicester with money to spend, and West Ham will have money to spend, Southampton may well get European football. There'll be a hell of a lot of people going for the same player. And the one thing that the Euros does is that, so many players at the Euros will wait until after that tournament before they really try and get their moves right. So it's going to be really difficult to predict it. Really, really difficult. And the one thing Pochettino's got to do is one thing to talk about winning the title, but he's got to manage those expectations in the right way, because he could well be asking himself, one thing to say, isn't it, if we suddenly get a 1-1 draw at home to Bournemouth on the first week end of the season or something, then the crowd will soon be on his back saying, come on, you told us we could win the league. So it's very, very key to how he manages the expectations as well.
Yeah, and you think, I mean, he's done pretty well with the media so far, hasn't he? Apart from the comment about Arsenal, which this week, which has been misconstrued to a large extent by most parties. But I think he's done a great job in that, hasn't he, in speaking about the club and for the club. So let's see.
Well, I think what he meant with the Arsenal thing is you can't just think about finishing above them, because if they finished 8th and we finished 6th. Whoopee, we finished above them, but where's it got us?
Yeah.
And I think his point of view is, if we finish first, we will be above them.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. I think that's what he's trying to get at. It's beyond just finishing above Arsenal.
Yeah, and we shouldn't be thinking just finish above Arsenal, should we? Should aim for the top, and that's the whole point of tonight's extra time, I suppose. So
exactly.
What you got on the Twitter and Facebook, Jay?
Well, we got from @DavidAdcock15. Win the league and strengthen with a couple of players. We have the right manager. Let him decide who we need. We've got Joel Steinhagen @JoelSteinhagen. The title, of course. This season was just a stepping stone. Too much talent for push for anything less. And then we've got @Visserman777. Just focus on the games ahead. Get the 3 points each game, then the title's ours. Stop dropping easy points. And that's a good point, because if you're going to win the league, we've got to find, I would say, 14, 15 points more than we've picked up this season, because most title winners will end up in that, early to mid 80s at least. And I mean, Leicester are on 80 points now.
Yeah.
So they're probably going to finish with 83. And, that's the type of limit we've got to get towards.
In terms of that question and that point, really good point, as you say there, Jay, would you next season, because we've spoken on the podcast throughout the season about the cups and how great it would be to have a cup back at Spurs, would you next season, in order to raise our points level, if it meant, an increase in our points level, would you sacrifice the cups, or certainly the domestic cups next season, if it meant raising the points level in the league?
I don't think you want to sacrifice anything. It's really difficult to tell, isn't it? Let's get through that group stage. I mean, if we get knocked out in the group stage, then there's no reason why you can't go for the FA Cup.
Yeah.
I suppose that the problem might come if we finish third and end up in the good old Europa League, and then my Twitter feed will be going mad because, like Klopp, I'd be saying try and win the trophy. But, it's very difficult to say. We need that squad in place, and we'll see what type of squad we've got come, hopefully, August the 1st. But, as long as it's not September the 1st before that squad's in place, then we'll have a better idea of what our genuine targets can and can't be.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly, great comment. Take it game by game, 3 points at a time, and see where you end up. Rick, what have you got on the social media this week?
Okay, so I've got Nathan Flint @NathFlint, who says, I think the title may be beyond us, unfortunately. A lot depends on how the summer pans out. I've got Euban Nado @Euban_ZA, who says, top 4 once more. Champions League is critical in attracting top players. Title push will automatically fall in after we carry on like this year. Interesting. And and finally, I've got Dave Ellis @fullback03, who says, where we aim depends on the backing Poch gets. When we kick off next August, looking at the squad list, it will give us an answer. And I think that I totally agree with that in terms of August and where we have our squad. I think, like some of the boys have echoed, we really need to have everyone in place at the start of August rather than at the very end of August, to give us the best possible chance, because we saw in the opening couple of games, Kane didn't find his form straight away, and I still look back to that start of the season where, the 2-2 at home with Stoke, the Everton, the 0-0, the United game we was unlucky to not get something out of on the opening day. That start, although we look at, the West Ham, the Arsenal games as the chances where we could have hit top, our start to the season really, if it had been better, like it was for Leicester, you could argue that we'd be going into this weekend playing for a lot more than what we are now.
Yeah, there's so many scenarios, aren't there? When you look back at the season, the twists and turns that have occurred, and you think this point dropped here and that win there for Leicester, that draw there for us, and so many different scenarios could have played out, and you can't help but wonder. And Ian, I'm going to put a scenario to you. Spurs finish 5th, but win the FA Cup next season. Is that a successful season?
Oh, it's a trophy in the cabinet, and that gives you. Does that give you a European place? But
yeah,
it's a Europa League place, isn't it? I don't think that is successful. I think, we finished second. I think we should aim for the next, or we finish second. I'm forgetting that we've got another game to play. Say we finish second. I think we need to put in place the squad that will enable us to go one better next season.
Yeah.
And yes, I would take. I'd love to get a trophy, but not at the expense of seriously challenging for the title, because I think that not only has that helped bring the team and the supporters together, but I think the supporters now believe in the team, in that they can now go on to perhaps do something better next year.
And I completely agree with you on that, Ian. As much as I love the FA Cup, and I've